Hi, Paria. So thank you so much for being here and welcome everyone to this episode of the Mortgage Matters with Gretchen show, where I talk to real people in the field of real estate and business who are not only experts in their field, but they're generous and have a lot of wisdom that they're willing to share with us. And the
Thank you,
goal,
Gretchen.
thanks, Paria. The goal of the show is to gain information and tips so you know how to reach your goals and pick some of the guesswork out of what to do or who to call. And today I'm very grateful to have Paria Rad with me here. Paria is a partner and real estate lawyer at Woitzik Polsinelli LLP. Paria has extensive experience in all aspects of the real estate transaction, and she's experienced in dealing with complex legal issues and has closed numerous real estate transactions. Paria holds a Juris Doctor in Law with second class honors and was called to the bar in Ontario in 2013. I first met Paria many years ago. I don't even know, I don't know, 5 or 10. Oh, Paria, I can't hear you. The screen has frozen, but I'm going
Last
to
10
just,
years now, and that's the focus of my practice, which is residential and commercial real estate. I'm happy to assist any clients with their needs in that field. I do have an open door policy. If anyone ever wants to reach out, if you have any questions, please feel free to connect with me. I am part of a bigger family, which is the law firm of Devery Smith Frank. We are one and the same firm. We do have different names. However, we are a full service law firm and we do offer services in all areas of the law. We do have offices across Ontario, from Toronto to Barrie to Haliburton to Midland. We do have two offices here in Whitby. I'm in our Woitzik Polsinelli office, which is solely restricted to real estate transactions. And we do have a second law office here as well in Whitby, that we do basically corporate, commercial work, estates work from as well.
and are they under what name? Because I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so our second office is under Devery Smith Frank.
Okay.
But we are a full service law firm. I mean, my team here in the Whitby office, we do only residential real estate law. But you know, if there's clients who need family law needs or corporate needs, or they have tax issues, we can cater to those clients by having another lawyer in the firm assist them. So a lot of clients find that useful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to mention how we met, and I don't know how long ago. I want to say, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, a very long time ago. I think through just doing real estate transactions together that I was mortgage broker and you were the real estate
That's
or
right.
lawyer.
Yeah, that's right. We've had many deals together. I see your name on the opposites, on the mortgage transaction. So I think we had a lot of deals together, and that's how we connected. And I know you do lots of events for the community, and I attended some of those, which were amazing.
Actually, you might want to touch on that. You're very involved in a lot of community and I believe charity and different things like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, a part of my time is devoted to doing, a lot of education series for real estate agents. Yeah, I do attend many charitable events to support, other colleagues in the profession. Yeah, a part of my practice involves me kind of giving back to the community.
Means a lot. All right, so our questions. So first of all, when working with people who are buying and selling homes, what tips can you offer to make the process go smoother? And if you can start answering that, I apologize. I'm going to close my window. There's some noise happening.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, look, this is the one of your biggest transactions that you're going to have in your lifetime. And I don't know how often you're going to buy or sell, but uh, you really want to make sure that that transaction is going smoothly. And to do that, I think one of the most important thing is we'll get to in a moment. But also making sure that you budget accordingly and you're realistic about how much money you're able to essentially spend on this transaction. So if you're trying to get an idea of that, I mean, on a purchase transaction, you have land transfer tax. There is land transfer tax calculators online. I know we have that on our website. So you can calculate how much you're paying in land transfer tax. If you are a first-time home buyer, the maximum entitlement that you will get, which is essentially the first-time home buyer rebate, it's a maximum of so you would get $4,000 off. So for example, if you use the calculator and your land transfer tax is $14,000, it would be $14,000 minus $4,000. And that's if you're holding 100% of the title on closing. So for example, if you're going on title with someone else and they're not a first-time home buyer, then you would only be entitled to 50% of the credit, which would be $2,000. So just making sure that you budget, look at land transfer tax. I mean, legal fees, it's generally between $1,300 to $2,000 across Ontario. So just making sure you get a quote, you look online to see what the legal fees are. Title insurance, that's essentially fraud and title protection insurance. And it is a one-time fee. If you are getting a mortgage, we do have to get the title insurance policy for the lender. And it's highly recommended that we obtain that for the owner as well. So if your purchase price is $1 million, you're looking at $1,000 for the title insurance premium. If you're buying for $2 million, you're looking at $2,000. Government registration fee, there's a government registration fee when I registered the transfer and when I register the mortgage, and that's $83 roughly per registration. And obviously making sure that you have your down payment, whatever your approval, whether you get 10%, 20%, 30%, you know, your mortgage broker will be able to assist you, just making sure that you have your down payment. And on the sale, obviously you have your commission, that's always plus HST, making sure that you factor the HST on what you're paying, making sure that you factor in any prepayment penalties when you break the mortgage, just looking at that to see how much you're paying. So just making sure that, you know, you look at the whole picture, you make sure you have enough resources to close that deal. If you do need assistance, I mean, feel free. I'm happy to run through numbers, or your mortgage broker may be able to assist with that. So just making sure that you budget and making sure that you work with the right team. And what does that mean? If you're choosing a real estate agent, making sure that you have someone who's familiar with your type of property, your type of neighborhood, who's able to you know, who has knowledge and experience based on the market and is able to do a good job with either purchasing or selling the property for you. Making sure you have the right mortgage broker. I mean, you can have the best real estate agent and the best real estate lawyer, but if you can't get a mortgage, your deal's not going to close. I think the most important piece of this transaction is making sure that you're working with someone who's experienced with getting a mortgage for you and navigating you through the lender conditions and getting your approval. And of course, working with an experienced real estate lawyer, making sure that you're not hiring someone who dabbles into real estate, who's going to be in court on the day of your closing, making sure it's someone who does primarily real estate law, and looking at Google reviews, talking to your mortgage broker or real estate agent to see whether they've worked with them before. And as well as you can do a search on the Law Society's website to see if there's complaints against that lawyer, and just making sure that they're real estate insured for the transaction. So I think that's crucial, balancing budgeting and having the right team to complete that closing for you.
Okay, perfect. And at the beginning, my screen froze for a few moments. Balancing what, I think I missed that part of it. Balancing.
Oh, just budgeting, right?
Oh,
Budgeting for the transaction to make sure that you have the sufficient means to get the deal done.
okay, that part came through, so that's good.
Okay.
Okay. I think those are very, very helpful. In fact, I'm going to touch base with you after, just to make sure I haven't been missing any of those costs in my estimate that I give to clients, because it's important. There are no surprises on that amount when they get their draft ready to bring to you, or wire, or however it's being done.
Yeah, and that's important. It will be a bank draft on closing. Always just keep in mind. I know sometimes you know, out there's phishing schemes, and you know, just be aware of generally fraud in our market. And with that being said, I mean, just making sure that you're bringing a bank draft for closing. I'm not going to be asking anyone to e-transfer me to wire to any accounts. It will be a bank draft on closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as the mortgage agent, from my side of things, is there specifics that I can do to help the process for when they get to you?
Absolutely. Just making sure that all the mortgage conditions are met at your end, and just making sure that we have mortgage instructions. We can get everything in line pretty quickly and efficiently for closing, but we just really need the mortgage instructions. And I know on most of our transactions, we haven't had any issues. We do have mortgage instructions. But yeah, sometimes there's times where we're chasing the mortgage instructions from the bank in order to get the deal ready for signing and for funding. So that's very crucial.
Okay. And I do know another thing that does come up is sometimes people don't, unless they get the advance warning, they don't have their binder letter proving they've gotten the home insurance. I try to let people know that fairly early in the process to get that.
Absolutely, yeah. Getting your binder letter, making sure the lender is noted on that insurance policy, and making sure that your lawyer gets a copy of it.
Okay, perfect. So people who are buying rental properties, are there certain things to watch out for in their purchasing or closing process
Yeah,
that
that's a
you
very
see?
good question. So it basically comes down to a couple of things. One is, are you assuming this tenant as part of the transaction, or are you getting your own tenant and putting that tenant into the property? Um, or is there a tenant in there that you want to evict, right? So it comes down to three things really. So if you're assuming the tenant, just making sure that you have a copy of the lease, making sure that you do your due diligence about that tenant to make sure that they've been paying their rent on time. Um, and um, and just making sure that as part of the agreement of purchase and sale, there's a clause for you to get a tenant acknowledgement and for the seller to give you a copy of the tenant acknowledgement. And that's basically a document where the tenant signs confirming that, yep, this is the current rent that I'm paying. I have no disputes between me and the landlord. So it's basically to give you a clean going forward with this tenant, that there's no outstanding issues that you as a new owner will have to assume. So very important to you do your own due diligence, because you want to make sure that you're not buying a problem in terms of dealing with this tenant. Um, if you're getting your own tenant in the property, of course, making sure that you're doing a credit check, you're doing again your due diligence to make sure that this is a good tenant. It's extremely difficult to get a tenant evicted. I mean, if they don't leave, you have to bring an application before the landlord and tenant board tribunal. And there's been a delay since COVID in dealing with files, and sometimes it takes 1 to 2 years before you can get an order. So just and if the tenant is not paying or they're not a good tenant, then you're dealing with that issue until you get the eviction order. And even if you get and let's say there's outstanding rent arrears and you get an order against this tenant. I mean, if they don't have any money, it would be very difficult for you to enforce that order and get payment. So it's important just to make sure from the beginning that this is a good tenant, you've done your due diligence. Otherwise, it's really problematic dealing with them. And of course, if there's a tenant in there that's supposed to be evicted, just make sure that your offer says you're getting vacant possession on closing, asking the seller whether they've delivered the notices to them, and just making sure that you get a full picture of how realistic it is for this tenant to be out by the closing date, right? Because I mean, sometimes we have transactions where it's supposed to be vacant possession, and the tenant doesn't leave, and we end up extending the deal until the tenant leaves. And in those instances, I mean, we would get compensation for you, but if we have a client who really wants to move in and there's a delay, it might affect them.
Yeah, and that's very important to keep in mind if
Yeah,
you're counting on getting in there. Maybe you're going to live in one of the units. You need to know there could be some might
absolutely.
into that unit.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we are pretty creative if that comes along and, the client has an open mind to it. We could try to get like daily compensation for them as long as they're willing to wait, right, in order to get possession.
Okay.
Yeah.
Important. Your
But I
experience
mean,
is
yeah,
helpful.
but I mean, I'm trying to get a tenant myself out from my
Mhm.
rental property, and it's taken me 2 years.
Wow.
2 years. I waited a year to go before the tribunal to render a decision. I didn't get the decision following the hearing, and I followed up. And apparently, the adjudicator is no longer there, and they just forgot to make the decision. So then they had to schedule a new hearing. But yeah, it's taken 2 years.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's a lot to deal with.
absolutely. Yeah,
But yeah, you have a lot of good experience that you can help
yeah,
any
yeah,
of these challenges. Okay.
yeah.
So
So
if an investor is buying a property instead of in their personal name, they're buying it in a corporate name. Is there any differences in the transactions or things people should know about in that scenario?
absolutely. I mean, if you're buying in a corporate name, the first thing you need to do is talk to your accountant for the tax implications. Making sure that this is the right thing for you in terms of purchasing the property under your corporate name. And the only person who can provide you with advice would be your accountant from whether that affects your taxes in any way. But once your accountant clears and says, yeah, no problem, you can purchase under your corporate name, obviously you would talk to your mortgage broker, like
Mm.
qualify for a mortgage under the corporate name, right? Because Gretchen, is there a difference from the lending?
Yes,
Okay.
because a lot of the lenders that I would work with, not all of them will offer a mortgage in a holding company. Is what it's a holding company. So, yeah, right from the start, that's important to know if somebody is in a
Yeah,
holding
so
company
so
or
as long as you get the clearance from your accountant and clear that that you should be holding under a corporate name to assist with your taxes, that I think, yeah, one thing is liability under a corporation, making sure that the liability is pushed on to the corporation. But for tax purposes, making sure that your accountant says, yeah, this is the best, most cost-effective way for you is to hold title under your corporate name. And as long as you can get a mortgage, if you're getting a mortgage under the corporation, then when it comes to me, essentially, yeah, a few things are different. So my client would be the corporation. And as part of that, I have to make sure that the corporation is in good standing. We would ask for your articles of incorporation, minute book. We would have to go through that minute book to make sure that all the filings are up to date. If you already have the corporation, I mean, if it's a newly incorporated company, then we would have to set up minute books for that company. And, I know some accountants do that. And if your accountant doesn't do it, our office could set up the minute book for you. And we would have to create new resolutions and bylaws allowing the corporation to enter into the agreement of purchase and sale and to take a mortgage under the corporate name. And we can do all of that as part of the closing for you. And oftentimes, I mean, not often, but some lenders will ask for a corporate opinion, generally on a commercial transaction, not really on a residential deal, but I mean, some do. But on a commercial transaction, if a corporate opinion is necessary, then our corporate lawyer would get involved and our corporate lawyer would draft an opinion letter um, to satisfy the lender's condition. And that generally there's a cost for that, which is about, 1,500 approximately for the corporate opinion letter.
Okay.
In addition to the general legal fees that you would pay on a purchase transaction. And if you're purchasing a new build property, it does have implications. Like if you're purchasing from a builder, and if the agreement of purchase and sale is under a corporate name, you will not get the HSD new housing rebate on closing, because it's deemed that, technically this can't be your primary place of residence if it's under a corporate name. So you wouldn't qualify for that $24,000 HSD rebate that's built into your purchase price. So you would have to pay an additional $24,000 on closing if you were buying from a builder. But you can post closing make an application to get for example, if you had a tenant in there, you could make an application for the rental rebate post-closing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
there are
important.
some implications, yeah.
Okay. And what about if it's multifamily property? And I think we'll leave the 5+ unit multifamilies out of this discussion because that could
Right.
be a longer conversation. But let's say it's
Sure.
a duplex, maybe a triplex. Does that, how does that affect the
Right, the
process with
transaction.
closing?
Yeah, so it does affect the process. I mean, generally, the clients would not notice it because we would be doing the back end of it. But basically, on a single family dwelling, we are not obligated to order a building and zoning search from the municipality and a fire search with the fire department, the local fire department, because title insurance insures the purchaser over it. So the title insurance company basically says, you don't need to order those searches on a single family dwelling. We will insure the client. So let's say post-closing, there was any outstanding violations with the municipality or an outstanding work order, the purchaser would be fully insured with their title insurance company. So most real estate lawyers across Ontario do not order that search, and they rely on title insurance, which is good, and it will fully insure the clients over it. Now, when there is a second living space or any separate living space, so if it's a duplex or a triplex, it's a requirement that we order those searches. So we do have to order additional searches, which is the building and zoning, and which is the fire search. And those typically cost when we order it about you know, 200 to $500 on that search fee.
Each search, like if it's three, is that two?
No, total. It's about 250 each. Each municipality is different, but generally.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do have to order those searches and we will review those searches, and the building and zoning would basically say, yeah, this is a duplex or it's a triplex. We would make sure that the zoning is in compliance with the agreement of purchase and sale. We would also make sure that there's no outstanding violations or work orders. But if we don't order those searches, the client would have no coverage through title insurance policy on the duplexes and triplexes. So it's a requirement. So we do order those searches each time. The client doesn't really see the back end that we're ordering it, that we're reviewing it, but they're going to have a little bit in additional fees that they have to pay, which is
Okay.
yeah.
Very good to know.
Yes.
Okay. Do you deal much where a client is using a private lender for the transaction? And how does that look like from
Yes.
different?
So absolutely, we do work for private lenders when they're lending. We do work for the borrower when they're obtaining a private mortgage. So it's very different. There's a lot of paperwork that would have to get done before we get funded for the deal. So when we have a private transaction, we know to get the client in as soon as possible because their documents tends to be onerous and there's a lot of documents and searches that are required. So I mean, we act on private mortgages all the time. But it's a lot of more documents and searches involved in order to get the deal funded at our end.
Okay. Good to know. How important is it for someone to have the lawyer review their agreement of purchase and sale? And especially, is it different if it's new construction versus
Yeah, I mean, it's crucial to have your agreement of purchase and sale reviewed, especially, I mean, on a new build transaction, because there's so many additional adjustments when you're buying new build. Development charges, park levies, and we want, as a real estate lawyer, we basically want to cap those adjustments. So we write to the builder's lawyer and we say, okay, for example, paragraph 1B, which is the development charges, cost not to exceed $5,000. So we have to make sure those adjustments are capped. If they're not capped, I mean, we have deals where clients sign off and they don't realize until closing. Like for example, in Toronto, development levies could be $30,000 just in addition to the purchase price. So New build, extremely important to have it reviewed, get all the adjustments capped, and understand the nature of the transaction. Especially with new build condominiums, there's two closing dates. You have your occupancy date where you're just given possession, and then you wait until final closing to get title. So just making sure that you understand the nature of the transactions and getting everything capped. Um, with a resale transaction, I mean, to be honest, typically we don't get too many of those reviews. People work with their realtors and they submit their offers. Um, I mean, it's nice if you can get a lawyer to review it, to give you some advice and feedback on it. And each transaction is different. Like, for example, if you're buying a cottage property, to know whether the waterfront is deeded, to know that there's access to the property. Like, all of that is very important, and you should have a lawyer just review it and give you feedback on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
My computer gave me a warning that I'm gonna be, or my Zoom is gonna cut us off in probably about, so I'm gonna go a little faster for the last couple of
Okay.
questions. My apologies. Um, so closings sometimes don't go as expected, and sometimes it's coming down to the day before or day of closing, and it looks maybe it's not going to close on the initial closing date. So anything, what can be done in that situation, or how can people best maybe
Great.
handle that?
Absolutely. I mean, technically, if you can't close on your scheduled closing date, that's a breach of contract. You could get sued and lose your deposit monies. So an extension is not always guaranteed. But in the real world, when dealing with transactions, a lot of people don't want to go through the hassle of relisting and reselling. So we do try really hard and we do get extensions, but I mean, it's not guaranteed, but generally lawyers work together to get the deal closed. But there's cost associated with extensions and it depends, each transaction is different, but for example, if you're extending your purchase transaction, the seller may want the interest on their daily mortgage or additional insurance costs they have, additional property tax costs they have. And if it's very last minute and they're in a moving truck and they have to reschedule their movers, they may ask you for those costs as well, and they may ask for a further deposit. So it's really all about negotiating, and we use our tactics and negotiating tools to navigate through that extension. But I mean, as much as possible, try to get everything done early, try to have everything in line for your closing. But if an extension is required, then we will work with the other lawyer and try to obtain that extension.
Which is amazing because it's very stressful on a client when it
Yes,
happens. So to have
absolutely.
someone confident who says, we're going to handle
Yes,
this.
yes. And if someone's asking us for an extension request, as long as they can evidence that there's a good reason and it's gonna close, and we can get our costs and maybe a further deposit, then I would always advise the client, let's give them the short extension and get the deal done as opposed to just relisting right now.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
What is any last pieces of advice for Canadians right now?
Yeah, I mean, my advice is just work with the right team, just make sure that everything's in line for closing. And get used to the interest rates that are out there now. I mean, haven't seen interest rates of 1% too often. I mean, I feel like that it's gonna take some time, maybe a long time before you see that again. So just get used to the interest rates that are floating out there right now.
I agree. That's great advice to prepare people. So, Paria, thank you so much for your time today. And I've learned a lot. And like I said, I'm going to be touching base with you to make sure I have some updated understanding of some of those closing costs and other things. So thank you so much. And it was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you for having me, and I enjoy having you on Mortgage Files all the time. You do a great job, and I appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you. And it will be in the show notes, but can you mention how to reach you?
Absolutely. You can reach me at my office by phone, or you can email me. I mean, Gretchen's going to share that information, but my office number is 905-668-4486, extension 230, or Paria, Paria, at durhamlawyer.ca.
Amazing. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.